I accept my mistakes. Not because I am weak, not because I have no defense, not because I lost the argument, but because I choose growth over ego. There was a time in my life when those words felt impossible. 3 simple words, yet they felt heavier than any burden I had ever carried. I would argue, I would justify, I would explain. I would defend myself with logic, emotion, excuses, anything to avoid saying, I was wrong. Why? Because admitting a mistake feels like shrinking. It feels like losing power. It feels like giving someone else control. It feels like standing exposed without armor. But here is the truth no one teaches you early enough. The moment you accept your mistake is the moment you take your power back. Most people think mistakes are proof of failure. They think mistakes mean incompetence. They think mistakes reduce their value. So they spend their lives running from them, hiding them, blaming others for them, pretending they didn't happen. But mistakes are not enemies. They are mirrors, and mirrors do not lie. Think about your life for a moment. Every regret you carry, every decision you wish you could redo, every word you wish you could take back, every opportunity you lost, every relationship that ended badly. Now ask yourself honestly, what hurt more, the mistake itself, or your refusal to accept it? Because denial prolongs pain. When you refuse to accept your mistake, you stay stuck in it. You replay it, you defend it, you build stories around it. You try to convince yourself you were justified. You search for someone else to blame so you can sleep better at night. But deep down, in the quiet moments, when there is no noise, no distraction, no validation, you know. You know where you went wrong. And that knowing becomes heavy. I used to think strong people never admitted they were wrong. I thought strength meant always being right. I thought confidence meant never apologizing. I thought leadership meant defending every decision. But I was wrong about that too. Real strength is emotional responsibility. Real confidence is the ability to say, yes, that was my mistake. Real leadership is owning your flaws publicly and correcting them privately. We are all works in progress. Yet we act as if we are finished products. We expect perfection from ourselves. We expect flawless execution. We expect to never misjudge, never miscalculate, never overreact, never misunderstand. But growth does not come from perfection. Growth comes from correction. A mistake is feedback, nothing more, nothing less. It is life saying, that approach didn't work. Adjust, improve. But instead of listening, we resist. Why? Because ego is loud. Ego whispers things like, they misunderstood you. You had no choice. You were reacting. They deserved it. You're still better than them. Ego protects your image, but accountability builds your character. An image fades, character remains. There was a moment in my life when I had to face the consequences of a decision I made. I hurt someone I deeply cared about. I didn't intend to. I didn't wake up planning to cause pain. But intention does not erase impact, and that realization broke me. For days, I tried to justify myself. I listed reasons. I replayed conversations. I focused on what they did wrong. I tried to balance the scale in my favor, but none of it gave me peace. Peace only came when I said, without conditions, without excuses, without adding. But, at the end, I was wrong. Not I was wrong, but you also. Not I was wrong, but I was stressed. Not I was wrong, but you triggered me. Just, I was wrong. It was humbling. It was uncomfortable. It was quiet. But it was powerful. Because in that moment, I stopped fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, you start growing in it. Mistakes do not define you. Your response to them does. You can make a mistake and become bitter. You can make a mistake and become defensive. You can make a mistake and become ashamed. Or you can make a mistake and become better. The choice is always yours. Society teaches us to fear failure. In school, mistakes are marked in red ink. In business, mistakes cost money. In relationships, mistakes cost trust. In public, mistakes cost reputation. So we learn early to avoid being wrong at all costs. But what if being wrong is the doorway to becoming wise? What if every mistake is a lesson disguised as discomfort? Think about a child learning to walk. They fall constantly. They hit the ground. They cry. They wobble. They fail again and again. But they never label themselves a failure. They don't say, walking isn't for me. They try again. Why? Because they do not attach identity to the mistake. They separate the action from who they are. That is maturity. As adults, we do the opposite. We fail once and say, I'm not good at this. We lose once and say, I'm not capable. We hurt someone and say, I'm a terrible person. But you are not your worst decision. You are not your biggest regret. You are not the moment you lost control. You are a human being learning in real time. And learning requires error. The only people who never make mistakes are the ones who never attempt anything meaningful. If you love deeply, you will miscommunicate sometimes. If you lead others, you will misjudge sometimes. If you chase big dreams, you will stumble sometimes. If you speak your truth, you will offend someone sometimes. That is part of being alive. The question is not whether you will make mistakes. The question is, what will you do after? There are two types of people in this world: those who protect their pride and those who protect their growth. Pride says, I cannot let them see me wrong. Growth says, I cannot afford to stay wrong. Read that again. You cannot afford to stay wrong, because uncorrected mistakes become patterns, and patterns become habits, and habits become character, and character shapes destiny. Many people are not trapped by one mistake. They are trapped by the refusal to learn from it. Life will repeat the lesson until you understand it. You keep choosing the wrong partners. There is a lesson. You keep losing opportunities. There is a lesson. You keep breaking trust. There is a lesson. You keep sabotaging your progress. There is a lesson. The universe is patient, but it is consistent. It will teach you until you graduate. Accepting your mistakes is enrolling in the lesson voluntarily. It is saying, I am ready to evolve. And evolution requires discomfort. There is something incredibly freeing about responsibility. Blame feels powerful at first. When you blame others, you feel justified. You feel superior. You feel safe. But blame also makes you powerless. Because if everything is someone else's fault, then nothing is in your control. And if nothing is in your control, you cannot change your life. Responsibility is heavy, but it gives you control. When you say, that was my mistake, you also say, I can fix it. You cannot fix what you refuse to own. I remember the first time I truly understood this. I had failed at something important, not small, not minor, something that mattered deeply to me. I had invested time, energy, belief. And when it collapsed, my first instinct was to blame circumstances. The timing wasn't right. The support wasn't there. People didn't understand. The system was unfair. Maybe some of that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. When I finally sat alone and asked myself hard questions, I saw it clearly. There were warning signs I ignored. There were improvements I delayed. There were responsibilities I avoided. There were risks I underestimated. And when I admitted that, something shifted. I stopped feeling like a victim of life and started feeling like a student of it. Students improve, victims complain. That moment changed everything. Because once you accept that you contributed to the outcome, you gain the ability to create a different outcome next time. That is power, not dominance over others, mastery over yourself. Self-mastery begins with self-honesty, and self-honesty begins with 3 words: I was wrong, not whispered in shame, but spoken in strength. There is courage in accountability. It is easy to argue. It is easy to defend. It is easy to attack. It is hard to reflect. It is hard to admit. It is hard to change. But hard things build strong people. Easy choices build fragile ones. Every time you choose growth over ego, you build emotional muscle. Every time you admit your mistake without excuses, you build integrity. Every time you apologize sincerely and change your behavior, you build trust. Trust is not built by being perfect. It is built by being accountable. People do not expect you to never fail. They expect you to take responsibility when you do. And the same applies to yourself. You must trust yourself. Trust that you can recover. Trust that you can improve. Trust that you can handle the truth about yourself without collapsing. Because here is another truth. If you cannot be honest with yourself, you will always live below your potential. Denial limits growth. Awareness expands it. There is no shame in making mistakes. The shame is in refusing to learn from them. One day, you will look back at the mistakes that once broke you, and you will see that they shaped you. They humbled you. They redirected you. They matured you. They strengthened you. They forced you to confront parts of yourself you would have otherwise ignored. Pain is a teacher. Mistakes are its assignments. You can fail the assignment by avoiding it, or you can pass it by embracing it. And when you pass it, you move to the next level. Life is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about increasing the quality of your lessons. At first, you make careless mistakes. Later, you make calculated ones. Then you make fewer. Then you teach others what you learned. That is growth. But it begins here, with acceptance, with humility, with courage, with truth. I accept my mistakes, not because I enjoy being wrong, but because I refuse to stay the same. And that decision, that one decision, changes everything. There is a silent war that happens inside every human being. It's not loud. It's not visible. No one claps for you when you win it. but it determines the direction of your life. The war between ego and evolution. Ego says, protect yourself. Evolution says, improve yourself. Ego wants comfort. Evolution demands change. And every time you make a mistake, that war begins. The ego immediately rises. It builds arguments. It gathers evidence. It prepares a defense. It reminds you of everything the other person did wrong. It shows you how unfair the situation was. It tells you that admitting fault will reduce your respect. But evolution is quieter. Evolution whispers, look again. Not at them. At yourself. Growth requires self-confrontation, and self-confrontation is uncomfortable. Because when you look honestly at your mistakes, you do not just see the action, you see the pattern behind the action. You see your impatience. You see your insecurity. You see your fear of rejection. You see your need to control. You see your lack of discipline, and that realization is humbling. But humility is not humiliation. Humility is clarity. It is seeing yourself without distortion. Most people are afraid of clarity because clarity removes excuses. It removes illusions. It removes the comforting stories we tell ourselves. But once you see clearly, you can never go back to blindness. And that is where real maturity begins. Think about the last time you overreacted. Maybe someone said something small, and you responded with intensity. Why? Was it really about what they said? Or was it about something unresolved inside you? Sometimes our mistakes are not about the moment. They are about the wounds we never healed. Unhealed pain reacts faster than wisdom. And until you acknowledge that, you will repeat the same reactions in different situations. Different faces, different places, same pattern. Accepting your mistakes is not just about saying sorry to someone else. It is about understanding yourself. Why did I respond that way? Why did I choose that path? Why did I ignore the warning signs? Why did I sabotage something good? These are powerful questions. And powerful questions create powerful growth. Many people want success. Few want self-awareness. But self-awareness is the foundation of sustainable success. Without it, you build achievements on fragile ground. You can win publicly and still lose privately. You can appear strong and still avoid your flaws. You can achieve goals and still repeat destructive behaviors. Because unexamined mistakes do not disappear. They wait. They resurface. They reappear in new forms. And life keeps testing you on the same lesson until you pass it. There is something deeply transformative about sitting alone with your thoughts and saying, I contributed to this outcome. Not entirely, not exclusively, but significantly. That shift changes everything. Because when you see your role, you see your power. If you contributed to the problem, you can contribute to the solution. That realization is empowering. It moves you from helplessness to responsibility. And responsibility is where leaders are born. Leaders are not people who never fail. They are people who analyze their failures. They do not hide from mistakes. They dissect them. They ask, what went wrong? What did I miss? What can I improve? What systems failed? What habits failed? What mindset failed? Because they understand something critical. Mistakes contain information, and information creates advantage. If you treat mistakes like enemies, you run from them. If you treat mistakes like teachers, you learn from them. The same event, two different responses, two completely different futures. Imagine two individuals who both fail at the same goal. One says, this proves I'm not good enough. The other says, this shows me what I need to improve. 5 years later, their lives will look completely different. Not because one was more talented, but because one was more honest. Self-honesty is rare, not because it is complicated, but because it is uncomfortable. It requires you to drop your pride. It requires you to admit gaps. It requires you to acknowledge immaturity. It requires you to confront fear. But here is the paradox. The more you accept your imperfections, the stronger you become. Because you stop pretending, and pretending is exhausting. Think about how much energy is wasted defending mistakes, replaying arguments, explaining yourself to multiple people, trying to control the narrative, trying to look right. That energy could be used for improvement. But ego consumes it. When you accept your mistake fully, something incredible happens. Silence, the noise stops, the defense stops, the internal argument stops. You do not need to justify anymore. You simply learn, and learning is peaceful. There is power in saying, I was wrong, and I am working on it. Those words build respect. Even if people are upset, even if trust is broken, even if consequences remain, because authenticity carries weight, people can feel sincerity. But sincerity is not just words. It is changed behavior. You cannot claim growth without evidence. You cannot say you learned without adjustment. If you truly accept your mistake, Your future actions will reflect it. That is integrity. Integrity is alignment between awareness and behavior. Without action, acceptance is incomplete. Sometimes accepting a mistake means losing something, losing an opportunity, losing a relationship, losing reputation, and that hurts, but even loss can be constructive if it produces wisdom. Pain without reflection becomes bitterness. Pain with reflection becomes transformation. Ask yourself, what did my last mistake teach me about myself? Not about others. About me? Did it reveal impatience, lack of preparation, fear of commitment, need for validation, avoidance of responsibility? Every mistake exposes something, and exposure is the beginning of healing. You cannot fix what you refuse to see, and seeing requires courage. Courage is not loud, it is quiet. It is sitting alone and admitting the truth without applause. It is apologizing even when your voice shakes. It is choosing growth even when your ego screams. It is forgiving yourself while still holding yourself accountable. Yes, forgiveness matters, because some people accept their mistakes but never forgive themselves. They carry guilt like a permanent label. They replay the past endlessly. They punish themselves mentally. But guilt is meant to guide you, not define you. Once you learn the lesson, release the weight. You are allowed to grow beyond your worst decision. You are allowed to evolve beyond your biggest regret. Holding on to shame does not prove maturity, it prevents it. True acceptance has 3 stages: recognition, responsibility, reconstruction. First, you recognize the mistake clearly, no distortion, no minimization. Second, you take responsibility without excuses, not partial responsibility, not conditional responsibility. Complete ownership of your part. Third, you reconstruct your behavior, you adjust, you refine, you grow. Most people stop at recognition. Some reach responsibility. Few reach reconstruction, but reconstruction is where transformation lives. If you react the same way next time, you did not truly accept the mistake. You only acknowledged it verbally. Growth is measured in changed patterns. Patterns reveal progress. Let's go deeper. Why do we resist being wrong so much? Because we attach our identity to being right. We think intelligence means never misjudging. We think strength means never failing. We think confidence means never doubting. But intelligence grows through correction. Strength grows through resistance. Confidence grows through recovery. Being wrong does not reduce your value. Refusing to learn does. There is something beautiful about someone who can say, I misunderstood. I reacted emotionally. I didn't handle that well. I need to improve. Those statements do not weaken a person. They elevate them. Because they signal awareness, and awareness is rare. In a world where everyone is trying to prove themselves, few are willing to improve themselves. Improvement requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky. But without vulnerability, there is no depth, no real connection, no real growth. The strongest people you will ever meet are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who fall, admit it, adjust, and rise differently. Differently. Not the same way. Differently. Because repetition without learning is stagnation, and stagnation slowly destroys potential. You have too much potential to stay stuck in pride. You have too much capability to be trapped by defensiveness. You have too much purpose to repeat avoidable mistakes. But potential alone is not enough. It must be refined, and refinement requires friction. Mistakes create friction. Friction creates growth. Growth creates strength. Strength creates impact. It all begins with honesty. Imagine the person you want to become 5 years from now: disciplined, respected, wise, emotionally balanced, trustworthy. Do you think that version of you avoids responsibility? Or do they embrace it? Do they defend their flaws? Or do they correct them? The future version of you is built by the standards you hold today. Raise your standards for accountability, not for others, for yourself. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control how you respond. You can control your reflection. You can control your willingness to change. And that control is enough to transform your life. Every mistake carries 2 possibilities: regression or evolution. If you protect your ego, you regress. If you protect your growth, you evolve. The choice repeats daily. Small reactions, small decisions. Growth is not built in grand speeches. It is built in quiet corrections. When no one is watching, when no one demands it, when it would be easier to ignore. Those are the moments that shape you. Those are the moments that build integrity. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be responsive. Responsive to feedback. Responsive to truth. Responsive to your own conscience. Your conscience is not your enemy. It is your guide. When something feels wrong inside, listen. That discomfort is not weakness. It is awareness. And awareness is the beginning of wisdom. The strongest sentence you can say is not, "I was right." It is, "I can do better." Because that sentence keeps you moving. It keeps you humble. It keeps you evolving. Perfection is static. Growth is dynamic. Choose dynamic. Choose improvement. Choose responsibility. Choose humility. Choose to say, "I accept my mistakes," and mean it. Because when you mean it, you transform. And when you transform, everything around you changes. Your relationships deepen. Your confidence strengthens. Your discipline improves. Your leadership sharpens. Your self-respect rises. Not because you were flawless, but because you were honest. And honesty with yourself is the highest form of strength.